Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming again this morning for another update on the wildfire situation here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Joining me again today is Minister Korab, and Minister Haggie is online. I'd also like to welcome today Gary Murray, who's President and CEO of Newfoundland Power. As well, Steve Balsam, Assistant Deputy Minister of Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture, is joining us online as well. Overall this week, it has been a very productive week for fire suppression. We've even seen one fire, the Paddy's Pond fire, move to being classified as under control, and the Martin Lake fire has now been classified as being held as opposed to out of control as they were for the last couple of weeks. And while we continue to make headway, we know there's still a long road ahead of us in terms of recovery efforts. I want to just note that the volunteer fire departments throughout the province, and really I mean throughout the province, who have come to CBN and come to Paddy's Pond and come to Martin Lake to work and to help on these fires. We've heard from some of them about issues that they now have with regards to damaged equipment. Certainly when you do planning for situations like this, and we have a program for local fire departments to apply for equipment and trucks, they don't necessarily plan for events where all their equipment is going to be damaged in the matter of 1 or 2 weeks. So we recognize that that's happened and not something that they expected. So we will be asking the fire commissioner to contact all the volunteer fire departments who have helped out over the last few weeks to get an assessment on any potential lost or damaged inventory. We'll work with those volunteer fire departments as we move forward as part of the recovery efforts as well. So again, recognizing it has been a very dynamic and challenging situation, and we know that people are eager to get home. And I want to assure everybody that the Department of Forestry and our emergency operations are working closely. We're continuing to monitor the fire behavior, the weather, impacts on communities, and we will make changes to alerts and advisories as soon as it's reasonably safe to do so. The good news this morning is that we are going to be able to lift the alert on Job's Cove and lift the alert for freshwater as well. But we're still looking at the evacuation orders and lifting those again when it's only reasonably safe to do so. There's a very long checklist that we have to go through to make sure that not only that the fire is out, but that the communities are safe for any various number of reasons, including things like power to homes, damage to homes that you might not see at first glance, roads, bridges, things like that. So there is a lot of work to do before those evacuation orders can be lifted. I just want to speak a little bit about some of the groups that have been putting in really amazing efforts over the last few weeks. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to meet with members of the Canadian Armed Forces here in St. John's. Minister Korab was there as well, Minister Crocker, our Avalon MP, Paul Connors, and Federal Minister Joanne Thompson, and couldn't thank them enough and expressed our deep gratitude for their service, not only to Canada, but in particular to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And then when the wildfires threatened our communities, the Canadian Armed Forces stepped up really without hesitation. They've been so professional, so courageous, and so dedicated, and much needed support has really helped our province in our time of real need. But most importantly, what they spoke about was our dedicated team here at the Provincial Emergency Operations Centre. And they spoke about how proud they were to work with them and how they worked seamlessly with them. And it was really gratifying and a proud moment to hear that they could show up here, dozens and dozens of members from the Canadian Armed Forces, and work seamlessly, as I said, with the people here at the Provincial Emergency Operations Centre. You can only imagine logistically how difficult it is to integrate hundreds of individuals into a system, but they certainly did so, and the Canadian Armed Forces couldn't speak highly enough of our team at PEOC. They certainly displayed, skilled and passion right from across the country, and they're so proud to have the opportunity to come here and support Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So on behalf of all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, I again want to thank everybody from the Canadian Armed Forces, and I want to thank Minister Thompson as well for her efforts and her open lines of communication over the last 3 weeks. It's been invaluable to getting people on the ground here to help fight these forest fires. We certainly won't forget their courage and their commitment as they continue to work on these fires. I also had the opportunity to meet with members of the St. John's Regional Fire Department this morning, and no big surprise, they shared the exact same stories we heard from the Canadian Armed Forces. Chief Sherry Colford, Deputy Chief Paul Chater, and Platoon Chief Mike Hall welcomed us there this morning to talk about what they've done and how they've worked with not only the Canadian Armed Forces, but they've worked with fire departments from out this region as well, including Witless Bay, Torbay, CBS, Portugal Cove, St. Phillips, St. John's Airport as well. And again, they spoke about the seamless efforts of people working side by side, people that had never met each other before, but nobody sort of got their egos in front of the situation. and everyone just sort of answered the call when the time came, showed up, did what they felt they could, and did what they were told to do, and worked side by side with people, like I said, they hadn't met before. And again, I think that's just a testament to how everybody put the safety of their communities first, not necessarily the safety of themselves. And again, can't thank them enough for their efforts. I want to also acknowledge PAL Aerospace today. This is a local company, of course, that everybody is familiar with, and they've played a very important role in help our firefighting efforts. What they're doing now is carrying out an exercise to fly over the active fires using infrared technology to help us pinpoint the remaining hotspots. And this work will help further progress on the Kingston fire over the next few days to ensure the other fires can be safely declared out as well. And again, another example of how the strength and expertise that we have right here in Newfoundland and Labrador is being used to protect our communities. The Canadian Red Cross, of course, Minister Korab as well and Minister Haggie as well have been to the evacuation centre in CBN in particular, and the other ones throughout the province. And we've seen firsthand the tremendous work that they're doing. It has been a devastating event, and we know the response isn't over yet, so the Red Cross is going to be continuing to do their great work here in the next number of days and potentially weeks. So today I would like to announce that our provincial government will be matching every dollar donated to the Canadian Red Cross 2025 Newfoundland and Labrador Wildfires Appeal. So this means that for every dollar contributed by individuals or businesses, the province will match it. So it will double the impact of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians' generosity. And of course, with the federal government matching the donations as well, it really means that every dollar will now become $3 to help families, communities, and frontline responders who have been affected by these devastating wildfires. This support will ensure the Red Cross has the resources it needs to assist evacuees and provide relief and continue to help our communities recover. So as for specific updates on the wildfires, as I said, overnight last night, PAL Aerospace conducted aerial thermal scans of all 3 wildfire areas to identify areas of concern. It does give us a very good picture of where the hotspots are around the houses and communities and across terrain. And once this data is collected and analyzed, this information is used by the incident management team to formulate plans of attack moving forward. In Kingston, the crews reported another strong day of fire suppression on the Kingston wildfire from both the air and the ground. Aerial mapping has been completed and the fire is estimated to be just over 10,000 hectares. There were clear skies yesterday, which allowed for steady aerial attacks, and in the western area, 8 water bombers worked the boundary lines and finished the day with a mission at the southern edge. 5 heavy-capacity helicopters worked on the north side, and crews from the province and from Ontario spent the day at both ends of the wildfire, providing ground suppression along the edges. Structure protection was actioned by local fire departments, and the Canadian Armed Forces, again, were working in priority areas where there were hotspots. We also had bucketing occurring on the southeast corner of the fire, and water bombers will continue to work that throughout the day. The plan today is 9 water bombers, 5 helicopters, and 1 bird dog, 22 incident management team personnel, which will be shared with Paddy's Pond, and ground crews of 11 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, 20 from Ontario, 22 from BC, 3 platoon military, which is 66 personnel, and 100 volunteer firefighters. After several days of dedicated work by Newfoundland and Labrador, BC, and Canadian Armed Force ground crews at Paddy's Pond, the wildfire, as I said, is now classified as under control. So this means that the wildfire has received sufficient suppression action to ensure there will be no further spread of this fire. The BC crew will now move to Paddy's Pond, from Paddy's Pond to the Kingston wildfire to provide support there today. There still will be 1 helicopter and 5 Newfoundland and Labrador firefighters at Paddy's Pond today. Martin Lake remains as being held, and ground crews spent the day yesterday digging into hotspots, and ground suppression work will continue throughout the day. Yesterday, forestry officials reopened a portion of the resource road at Miguel Lake, which is located 3 kilometers from the Bay d'Espoir Highway, or Route 360. But please note that the road is only open to cabin owners located at Miguel Lake. Access to cabins beyond there, as well as cabins in Martin Lake and Rushy Pond areas, are remaining closed at this time. We'll have 4 helicopters and 54 ground personnel at Martin Lake today. Just a couple of other notes. As the weather starts to cool, it is important to remember that wildfire season is not over. Of course, the fire ban remains in place until at least September 7th. But effective immediately, we are only suspending operating permits under the Forestry Act when a region is under a very high or extreme fire hazard rating. Previously, this included areas with a high fire hazard rating. So permit holders will be updated on this situation, but of course they can find that information online as well. Just an update on the structure loss and the notification process. We noted some discrepancies between Newfoundland Power and what was seen on the ground. So this is why we want to make sure everybody notes that the numbers that were given in terms of structure loss will fluctuate both up and down. It actually has gone down from 203 to 196 due to those discrepancies. That was 2 fewer in Western Bay, 2 fewer in Ocrapick Cove, and 3 fewer in Northern Bay. And of those 196, 179 people have been officially notified of the loss of their structure. And again, to those individuals who have lost structures, my deepest sympathies. Incredibly, no words to say how sorry we are for that. And I know it's going to be a long road ahead for those individuals and families who have lost their homes and lost their communities. But of course, Minister Korab's team is in place to work with them, and there are individuals from Minister Korab's former department, Families, the Department of Families, to talk to individuals about what they want going forward in terms of rebuilding their structures and potentially where they want to live in the medium term until they find out a more permanent solution. So with that, I will pass it over to Minister Korab.
Thank you, Premier. I also want to take a moment to thank the Red Cross and Salvation Army and everyone involved for the work they've done. Specifically, the Armed Forces, as the Premier said. They got the call late in the evening. They landed at 2 a.m. here in Newfoundland and were up and running that day, helping with these wildfires. So I just want to say thank you to the Armed Forces as well. The work on our Cabinet Committee is well underway. The committee is fully formed. We have ministers represented from Justice and Public Safety, Transportation and Infrastructure, Education, Family, Childhood Development, Families and Affordability, Health, Community Service, Housing, Municipal Affairs, Community Engagement, Rural Economic Development, and Industry, Energy, and Technology. We've had 2 productive meetings so far, yesterday and this morning. I just came from one. So I want to be clear, so this Cabinet Committee is set up, just by nature, it's set up with Cabinet Ministers, but there will be extensive engagement with the residents and the communities in Conception Bay North. So we want to be clear on that, and they'll be front and center working with us every step of the way as we work through this. The committee members are represented by the departments. They're crucial in these response efforts. And the purpose is to ensure that we work together, hand in hand with these communities as we work through these recovery efforts. As soon as the Premier announced this committee was forming, I went out to Carbonear that day and talked to the impacted individuals. Multiple conversations about their homes lost, 100-year-old homes lost. So it was a taxing day, and again, as the Premier said, can't imagine what it's like to go through something like that, but I just wanted to again repeat that, know that we're here. We're also going to ensure that local representatives have their say, and this will be communicated all the way right up to the federal government to ensure that everyone understands the full context, the full impact. That's what's happened here. So again, I just wanted to let people know that your voices will be heard as we move forward. As you can appreciate, we can appreciate that we're in very uncertain times. The people of Conception Bay North are seeking answers. We understand that. We're working our best to get those answers. Please know that we're moving as fast as we can with urgency and a sense of purpose. Even so, this will take some time. The scope of this work is wide-ranging, and it's going to involve countless partners working together. Newfoundland Power will go next and talk about that, but it's not as simple as just turning the power back on. Some of the examples, and this isn't inclusive, but we need to make sure there's clean drinking water, air quality, hazardous materials from buildings to deceased livestock, roadways, bridges, communications. You have to be able to call 911, so we work with the telecommunications companies. We have the access to fuel, access to healthcare. So there's a lot of things that impact how quick residents can get back to these areas, but know that we're working as quickly as we can. So as I've said, we're committed to this recovery effort. We're on it, and we will get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Haggie, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Premier. I think it's only important for me also to add my thanks for the work the volunteers have been doing and for the spirit shown by the evacuees. It's a difficult situation, and it's not going to be resolved as quickly as everyone would like, unfortunately. And it will be a period of ups and downs. But we've done stuff like this before, and we've got through it. The reception centre is still a hub, a hive of activity, thanks to the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. We have 3,185 households registered for a total of 6,513 individuals. To date, the Red Cross have dispersed 1,552 emergency financial support payments. The Salvation Army and their helpers have delivered, I think the last count was over 12,000 meals. I was down at the reception centre the other day, greeted by goats at the door, therapy goats, and went into the kitchens with appropriate headgear on. The Knights of Columbus, the Shriners, the Masons, I was amazed at the variety of people who, as the Premier said, just put their egos on one side and got down to it. The NLHS staff there actually have a mini care facility at one end of the building, and that is working smoothly. Again, I would echo Minister Korab's comments. There is a 2-page checklist of things that need to be done, and only about 4 or 5 of them are now related to the fire. Premier's alluded to hotspots near the community, hotspots in the tree line, and growth or no growth of the fire at the perimeter. There are comments on social media that for some nefarious purposes we're keeping people out of their homes so we can do stuff with the military or firefighters. Nothing could be further from the truth. The reason that people are not allowed back in their homes under the evacuation order is purely for their safety and well-being. No other reason at all. It is a difficult time. There are mental health supports available. And there are also discussions between the association, the Fire Services Association and LLHS to try and find a way that works for first responders to also receive this support. So with that, Premier, I will end as I have done before. Be kind to each other and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Now, Gary Murray, as I said, President and CEO of Newfoundland Power, who I'm very thankful for him being available today to update on what Newfoundland Power has done and what they're facing, and I appreciate them working very closely with the province and certainly with Mr. Korab's committee as we go forward. So, Gary.
Thank you, Premier Hogan. Good morning, everyone. Let me start by saying to all the communities impacted by the devastating wildfires, on behalf of all of us at Newfoundland Power, please know our thoughts are with you during this difficult time. We also extend enormous gratitude to all the firefighters and others who have been working tirelessly to protect our communities, and all the other volunteers who are helping in evacuation centres and other activities. I would also like to recognise our own employees who have stood at the ready to assist whenever and wherever needed. Newfoundland Power has been working closely with Provincial Emergency Operations Centre and other emergency response to the wildfires in our province this summer. When wildfires threaten the communities we serve, our role includes turning off power at the request of emergency partners to assist firefighting efforts and to keep first responders and the public safe. We have also assisted government with using our mapping technology and metering information to confirm the individuals whose homes and other meter structures have been destroyed by the Kingston fire. This week, when and where it was safe to do so, we have entered the impacted communities to assess damage to Newfoundland Power's infrastructure, while addressing immediate safety issues that could threaten first responders, such as unstable pole structures, low wires, and hanging equipment like pole-top transformers, to name a few. We have identified approximately 200 poles that have been compromised or destroyed by the fire. That is about 12% of the total 1,750 poles in the fire area. We will be replacing 125 of these as it is safe to do so. The remaining 75 will not be replaced until property reconstruction occurs. After 2 days of work this week, we have replaced 30 of the 125 poles. And our crews and all our team are determined to complete this work as quickly and as safely as possible, dependent upon our ability to gain access to the areas. So, what that really means is that, it is still an active fire area, so depending upon the conditions, we may or may not have access to certain areas. For example, there's one area where there's 3 poles that we know that need to be replaced, and luckily this morning we were able to get authorization to enter that area. So as we get more access to all of these areas, we will be able to address these poles in a timely manner to make complete restoration of our assets. And this will allow then power to be restored to all of the communities, and then we will work with government. Once they are aware of that, they will notify residents about re-entry and those types of things. So we will continue to work closely with government and our emergency partners as the wildfire response and recovery efforts evolve. I would like to extend a thank you to Premier Hogan, Minister Korab, Minister Haggie, and the Government Committee and Cabinet and their leadership during this time, and the many others who are contributing to the provincial emergency operations effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. And just from Gary's update, obviously you can see that there is a lot of work to do, but they're already, a good chunk of the way through that work, so that's very much appreciated. It just goes to Minister Korab's point and Minister Haggie. There is a long checklist of things that need to be done. It's not just about the fires being out or under control until people can return to communities, but we want people to know that we're working on them, and some of the work has already been done despite the fact that individuals can't go home yet. So we will get there, and we're working as hard and as fast as we can. If anybody has any questions.
Hoping you can provide some more information on the discrepancy in the numbers and why you think that discrepancy might have been there.
Well, yeah, so as we work through the work on the ground, actually identifying structures that are lost, matching them up maybe with the municipal town offices, some of which obviously are in local service districts and don't have that, and then matching them up with Newfoundland Power bills. They're not all matching 100% as we anticipated when we gathered all that information. So a discrepancy of 7 out of 203, that's probably not to be unexpected, and we'll continue to make sure we get all that accurate information as we can as we continue to contact people who have lost homes or lost structures. So just for an example, maybe there could be a power bill in someone's name that has 2 structures. So maybe their shed and maybe their home. So we counted it as 2, and with we counted it as 1, and maybe it should be 2, for example. So it just takes a little bit of time to make sure we get 100% accuracy, but that's pretty close so far, and we'll continue to update the public on those numbers.
How does restoring power impact, I guess, how the timeline of people getting back into their homes? Does all the power need to be back on before people can go back, or do all the poles need to be replaced?
I'm sure Minister Korab has discussed that at his committee, but that's one part of the process, is restoring power. Certainly don't want individuals returning in the event it's not safe, and power is an important part of being safe.
Yeah, similar today with Job's Cove and Freshwater, it'll be a phased approach as people go back in. So as power's on in those areas, that checklist that we talked about is safe to do so, it'll be phased in, but obviously the power is an integral part of that re-entry process.
Minister Korab, I'm curious about what you heard on the ground when you were in Carbonear and how you're going to take that into the conversations with your committee.
The first time I was out there was Victoria, which was probably 2 weeks ago now. In those early stages was different than where we are now when I was out there last. Communication was a big thing that we heard. We've really ramped that up as we're doing here now today and just about every other day. The loss of their homes and how that works going forward, how we help residents there. But again, as I said earlier, we want to hear directly from residents. What is it you want to see as your community is shaped going forward? Because some of these communities will look different than they were 3 weeks ago. So we'll take everything they say and it will form how we help restore these communities.
It's less than 2 weeks until back to school, and of course there's a lot of questions we're getting from people still just about what that looks like, because there's one school that's gone and those people will be sent elsewhere, but there's other schools that are still evacuation centers and these sorts of things. When will people start to, I guess, know what the plan is for what back to school looks like for the CBN region if people aren't back in their homes and this sort of thing?
So certainly the Minister of Education is continuing to work on that. Obviously we've lost one school. that's been destroyed, and we'll have to work with the families of children at that school. What we will be doing is moving the evacuation center out of Carbonera Academy. Of course, we need that available for schooling. I think over the next week, we'll certainly look at where the fires are, where people can go. If some communities might be able to return home, which will help us plan for other evacuation centers that may be needed. And certainly now that we know 170 odd people have been contacted about loss of structures, we'll start talking to them about, do they want to go to an evacuation center? We're looking at other housing options around that part of the province, including motels and temporary living accommodations that have been used by temporary foreign workers. So that's all part of the process that plays into the children getting back to school on time.
Mr. Murray, if I may just ask about the 125 poles that you folks need to replace. Can you put into perspective how much work that is, what sort of time that's going to take?
Yeah, it depends upon the conditions in the Kingston area. Like I said, it is still an active wildfire. We have about 6 crews in there now and a couple of pole crews. And, yesterday we got about 20 poles yesterday. But, it depends upon the conditions. There's a hurricane going to be in our territory this week. Not sure if that may slow things down, the conditions in the wildfire. So it's really hard to say a number as to when it'll be complete. But, we're doing about 20 poles a day with the current amount of crews. If we're able to add more crews in a few days, that could speed it up. So hopefully we are able to do that, and we can. And so I'd say that's about, the best I could say for right now in terms of a timeline. It really depends upon the conditions on the ground.
6 crews, how many personnel is that?
Crew is 2 people, and it would also be 2 pole crews as well.
The 75 poles that you've determined, I guess you can maybe put to the side until homes are rebuilt. Does that leave any gaps in the system, or are these 75 poles that...
No, they won't create any gaps. So like all the main line poles, there's about 50 poles on the main line. So those are the ones we're doing first. And, we will have most of those done by this weekend. And then we'll do what we call the taps, which are the pole lines off the main. And we'll ensure that any customer that can be reconnected will be able to be reconnected. Those 75 poles won't have any bearing on any customers not being able to be reconnected.
Can you give us a better idea of the criteria for lifting evacuation orders? Because some areas seem like they're pretty low risk right now, say Salmon Cove. Can you give us a better idea of that checklist? And I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a list we can provide so you can have, but, as I said in the last list, you got to have clean water. Power has to be restored. So through our PIAC group, Provincial Emergency Group, we make sure everything it's got to be safe. It's not just as simple as, you're allowed back in, you have power. So there is a list, we can provide on that, but it is an extensive list, but again, as the Premier said, it's for the resident safety going back in. We have to make sure that it is safe to do so.
I know it's a moving target and there's a lot of variables, but are we talking several weeks before people could get back in their homes? Or I know it's a rough timeline, but what could people reasonably expect here?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of variables. We've seen 2 out-of-control wildfires over the past 3 weeks that have now been downgraded, so that's good news. This Kingston one was obviously much larger compared to Paddy's Pond and Martin Lake, and it's still out of control. So the fire has to not be out of control before we even think about, lifting evacuation orders. Shouldn't say it like that. The communities need to be safe from out-of-control wildfires, right? It's still possible that the fire can be smaller and out of control, but communities can be safe from the fire. And then, as Minister Korab has been saying, even though they're safe from the fire and from smoke, these communities some of them are going to be very seriously damaged. Hazardous materials, transportation, roads, bridges, power, water, all those things need to be assessed as well. Gary gave an update today. I think they've moved incredibly fast. I think 25% of the poles they plan to replace have already been done, on an average about 20 a day. So that's assuming there's no more hurricanes and no more fires. That's still a week away before they can complete that work. So again, we've always asked the individuals in this part of the province for patience, and they've given it to us. And I know they are getting anxious though, and it is getting long. But we need to make sure the fires are safe, the fires are under control, and then we need to make sure the communities are safe. But the work is ongoing at the same time. One is not done without the other. We are working on the fires and we are working on the communities at the same time.
province be helping people rebuild their homes, whether it be financial assistance, or are there any plans there for that?
Yeah, so we've always told everyone in these communities that the province is going to be there. What that looks like, we don't know yet. And part of the reason we can't commit is because we don't know what the damage is. We don't know, exactly who's lost their homes. We don't know who wants to rebuild. We don't know the extent of communities that maybe are potentially. Kingston certainly seems like severely damaged as opposed to some other communities where hopefully a lot of it is remaining. So we need to get an assessment on what these communities look like, and as Minister Korab has said, we need to really get an understanding of what individuals who have been in these communities their whole lives and for generations want the communities to look like going forward. If people want to rebuild, I support that decision and will support them in doing so. But if people make a decision that they want to maybe move somewhere else with family members, move to surrounding communities, those are conversations that we need to have before we even get a sense of the financial impact and what it looks like and how we can be there to help families, and of course how the federal government is going to work with us in helping them.
With that in mind, Minister Korab, I just want some clarification on the committee. Will community leaders actually be a part of this committee, or will they be engaged on as plans move forward?
Yeah, so by nature, these committees are cabinet committees. So, around the table when we're having the meetings, will just be cabinet and staff. But again, we will be going to the communities with engagement to hear from them. So, let it be known that your voices will be heard and it will form part of how this shapes going forward. But for the actual just around the table will be the cabinet ministers. But that's where the decisions are made, but those decisions are formed and shaped will come from the residents.
And just as an example, we had a cabinet committee for Hurricane Fiona, and exactly what we did there is what we'll do here is we worked with people who had lost their homes in the event that they could rebuild, and there was financing for that. In the event that they didn't want to rebuild, it was a very traumatic event, as you can imagine, to see your home fall into the ocean. We offer them other opportunities for pieces of land, either in Port aux Basques or other parts of the province as well. So there's all kinds of options and opportunities that we'll need to discuss with individuals and families who have been affected.
The structure numbers that you've given out, if they allowed for people that may be off the grid?
I think, yeah, I would say yes, because they are going door to door and road by road, but they are certainly matching them up with Newfoundland Power bills, so it would be probably a little bit more difficult to do that matching, but again, that's probably why we're seeing some discrepancies.
Any update on how much the province may have used of the tariff contingency on fire suppression?
Zero. Zero of the tariff contingency. If the $200 million for the tariff contingency?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't used that for any of the expenses for fire.
The 20 or 25 million that you referenced, maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah.
My apologies.
There are other options, I guess, for contingency that wouldn't be the tariff contingency. We always have a contingency in the budget. The $200 million was specifically related to what we may and what we still may face in terms of the ongoing trade wars. I know, for example, Prime Minister Carney and President Trump talked yesterday, so we'll continue to see where that goes, but that $200 million has not been touched. No, that's okay. That's a good question.
In Jasper, this time last year, homeowners were offered a bus tour, is not the right word, through the community, escorted, not able to leave the bus, but so they could see the communities. Is that something that you've considered?
We considered that. I don't know if Minister Korab talked about that at his committee, but we chatted, Minister Korab and I talked about that with Minister Haggie this morning. That would probably be an initial step that we could take to allow individuals to return, to see their communities. There's a risk that if we just open the communities up when they're not totally safe to return, people might still make the decision to stay, which we don't want. So busing options is something that we will look at for individuals who might want to be able to drive through the community at a time when it's safe to do that, but not safe to return home.
Have there been any people allowed to come back in and look at their properties, maybe say on a one-by-one basis?
No one specifically like that, but of course there are individuals in the community, volunteer firefighters and mayors who have been in and out of the community, and I'm sure they're reporting back what they've seen. I know I've talked to them about what they've seen, so there is some word of mouth that's been traveled throughout these communities about what they look like now.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you anticipate any further impacts from the hurricane, aside from the power line stuff? For the hurricane that's passing by Aaron, I believe it's called, passing through the next couple of days, do you anticipate any further impacts to firefighting efforts?
Yeah, if the hurricane affects us, absolutely, it will affect the firefighters. rain will certainly be welcome, wind certainly will not. And if it gets very bad, of course, we'll have to pull not only the air assets out, but the firefighters as well. As we've said from day one, safety is the most important thing. So, yep, we'll, lots of variables, as we said, and this is certainly one of them.
Mr. Murray, the poles that need replacing, is that part of, I guess, an overall budget that Newfoundland Power would have annually for replacing poles, or is this a new expense?
We have pots that we have, like we use with the regulator for allow for things like this, but it will be an application, that we will eventually at some point file to the regulator, say that this was beyond the scope of what we anticipated this year and is not allowed within our allowances. So we will, at the appropriate time, follow up with an application.
Do we have any more details on the compensation for volunteer firefighters?
No, we're still, we talked about that this morning as well. I think we're in a place where we need to allow the volunteer firefighters to continue to do their work, their dangerous work, and then meet with them and meet with their chiefs to really get a sense of the efforts that they've put in and work a compensation package around that at that point. So very much appreciate their work. Obviously, it's dangerous and important work, and it's gone a long way in getting to where we are today. And we will be there for them, and we wanted to announce that early on, that they're not just doing this on their own time, on their own dime, but we'll be there to help them out as well. Okay, thanks everybody, and have a good weekend and stay safe.
Yep.